with item number 3 on the agenda, which is an action on the previous meeting's minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting held on April 26, 2021 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor from Rick, seconded by Jen, to approve the minutes for the regular meeting held on April 26, 2021 as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, action on vouchers. Those are in your board packet.
As you folks are considering, Mr. President, I will move to approve general checking account fund vouchers totaling $1,006,290.73 as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. There is a motion on the floor by Joe, seconded by Dave, to approve general checking account vouchers totaling $1,006,290.73 as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is public comment. Just going to go over a few things from the board policy, policy 167.3. Public comment is encouraged and permitted, limited to current items on the agenda and before the board takes any action of substance. Just summarizing some of the main points here. Each speaker is entitled to 3 minutes, and just as a courtesy, I will have my timer on my my clock or my phone here. If you get to Jen, that we will extend public comment past 15 minutes if needed. Any discussion on that?
How many speakers?
There are 5 speakers. Did any sign up via email? No. Okay. So 5 speakers. So we should probably get in 15, but just in case. Okay. With no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, nay. Okay. Motion carries. And if each speaker could just start out with your name, please, and then you can start. First on the list is, and if I get your name wrong, I apologize, Dan Dufour.
Everybody can hear me? Hello, I'm Dan Dufour. I'm a resident of Janesville, and I live in the Milton School District. Thank you to the school board for allowing us to speak this evening about a growing parental and citizen concern regarding the current mandatory student mask use policy. There is no legal authority nor imminent public health crisis which allows for experimentation on the children anymore. We are experimenting on our children as it pertains to the current mandatory mask use policy. Let us explain. The FDA and OSHA have made clear since the 70s, masks do not block the transmission of respiratory virus like COVID. Therefore, the FDA instituted an emergency use authorization, an EUA, in April 2020, the same EUA used for the COVID vaccines, to approve masks as medical devices with the intention of reducing the spread of COVID. Federal Law 21 U.S.C. Code 360-BBB-3 governing the conditions of authorization of an unapproved emergency medical product, a mask, requires the government to quote, ensure that individuals on children from wearing the mask many hours per day. Additionally, this experimentation is with no imminent public health crisis. According to the county data, as of May 6th, community infection rates is leveling off at less than 0.3%. Hospital beds used for COVID patients is only 7.6%. Survivability rate for infected students is 99.6%. Additionally, 92% of Rock County citizens over the age of 65 have been fully vaccinated. Therefore, due to the seriousness of this matter, the Milton Parents for Mass Choice strongly believe it is time to significantly and urgently change the student mask use policy.
30 seconds.
Our recommendation to the board is to immediately restore choice to parents and to not mask their children if they desire, both inside and outside of school. We believe informed parents can make the best decisions for their children. This also aligns with the law, as I just stated. Additionally, we request transparency in the decision process, and therefore we kindly ask for the mask use policy matter to be on the agenda at the next board meeting prior to releasing to parents. Thank you.
Next on the list is Ms. Lundgren.
Hello. Sure. So thank you for allowing me to speak to you all tonight. My name is Colleen, and I'm a parent of 3 children in the Milton School District and of one of many concerned parents advocating for mine and other children. I will no longer sit back and watch this pandemic take away any more of my child's liberties and freedoms away. Stop giving excuses that our kids are resilient. Stop turning the other cheek and start advocating for our child's health. It is not about the mask. It is a painful swab and another quarantine. It is virtual learning, canceled sports, absence of field trips, and memories they will never get back. It is mass teachers, distance desks, and a year without performances. It is my child telling me how excited he was finally being able to see his best friend's face one day at recess, but at the same time being scared he would get in trouble for having his mask down. It's my child telling me how he could finally breathe today at recess because he pulled his mask below his nose while no one was looking so he could run around and play with his friends. It's time to end the threats of being sent to the principal's office in detentions or staff threatening children to call their parents if their mask is seen below their nose. There have been reports of children chewing and cutting holes through their masks just so they can breathe. I will not sit back and watch you comply with ridiculous, unproven, and forced mask mandates that are illegal. Why are we continuing to mask our children? If you have been doing any of your own research, you would see that statistical data prove that children are not the drivers of this illness. Does it make sense to mask up a child with every staff member in the community having the opportunity to have been fully vaccinated at this point? Please tell me what we are waiting for. What is the magic number for these children to be unmasked? Who is going to take responsibility if something were to happen to my child related to wearing a mask? Can you guarantee my child's health will not be affected by these masks that you are forcing them to wear? Who is liable? My child deserves just as much as the next child to have in-person teaching without having his breathing involuntarily restricted. If you are afraid, stay home. If you are afraid, keep your child virtual. If you are afraid, have your child wear a mask at school. You are supposed to be advocating for my child's safety, and you are doing the exact opposite. Where is the accountability? I know you have good intentions, but you are blindly listening to who we consider experts without solid evidence to back it up. It seems as though children are being sacrificed to appease an irrational, fearful society that refuses to see the truth. The virus is real, but the narrative is not. This is what grew from my son's mask after 2 days. Are you okay with this being directly on the inside of a child's mask that they continually breathe in and out of? I know your main priority is safety, so I ask you if this looks safe. As previously stated, Milton Parents for Mass Choice is asking the board to significantly and urgently change this mask use policy to be optional, allowing for parents to decide for their children to be masked, both inside and outside of school. We also ask that the board be transparent and add this to your agenda for the next board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Ms. Hannah.
Good evening. I was not going to come and speak tonight as my words continually fall on deaf ears, but considering yesterday was Mother's Day, I felt compelled to come and use my voice to speak for my child. I will continue to stand for his well-being, whether I stand with a group or I stand alone. And tonight it seems I stand with a group. I'm asking this board to reconsider its school mask requirement and to change it to optional. It is long past time we return to personal choice to our students and our community and remove these mandates. If families decide that their situations warrant it, nothing is stopping them from wearing a mask, but allow those who no longer wish to wear them the ability to remove them. The district has social distancing measures in place. Any person now over the age of 12 who wants a vaccine can get one. And our teachers are long past the waiting period for vaccine effectiveness. Since February, there have been less than 50 cases per day in our county of over 165,000 people. The average is 30. What is this school board waiting for? 0 cases? That is unrealistic. Are you waiting for our health department to lift the mandate? That is also unrealistic. Rock and Dane County are the only 2 counties in South Central Wisconsin that still have a mandate, and not shockingly, they are both led by ideologues. But I can tell you as of this morning, Rock County has the highest 7-day average of cases per 100,000 in southern Wisconsin, and that is with a mandate that the other counties do not have. This pandemic stopped being about follow the science when it became follow the politics, and our children are the ones who are being punished, dehumanized, and programmed that they are a danger to each other and themselves. A child is more likely to get struck by lightning than to die from COVID, and it has been noted multiple times that kids are not super spreaders. Please allow our children the ability to remove their masks when they are sitting distance with each other, as their development and learning is being impacted by not being able to see facial expressions. They remove their masks when they eat in their classroom, but I suppose the virus is kind enough not to spread while they are eating. And please remove the mask for outdoor sports. Watching 20 children this weekend playing soccer with masks on was one of the most outrageous things I have ever seen. I certainly would not want my breathing impeded when I am exerting that kind of energy, but this administration has mandated it for our children. Enough is enough. Let them play and let them breathe. I implore this board, who makes the decisions, as our elected leaders, to make the decision to remove the mandate in our classrooms when the children are distanced and to remove the mandate on outdoor sports. Throughout the school year, this board has rubber stamped every recommendation brought forth by the superintendent.
30 seconds.
It has become very obvious that it seems will and follow the requirements of the health department, regardless of its specific impact to Milton. You do not have to do that. You can look at our school district specifically. Last week, we extended the outdoor mask mandate because of an uptick in cases. There were 4 in our school district. Have you inquired what is the end game? When is the mandate going to be removed? 0 is impossible. And if so, it's nothing more than political virtue signaling, which has no business in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Ms. Williams.
Good evening. I just want to start out tonight by saying there currently is not a COVID pandemic in our state. There is no COVID health crisis in the state of Wisconsin, let alone Rock County. And when COVID first broke, we heard all the jargon, PPE, personal protective equipment. And the definition of that personal protective equipment is clothing. Clothing, helmets, goggles, and other garments and equipment designed to protect the wearer's body from injury or infection. I'm sorry, but this is not designed to protect me or you or any of the masks anyone in here are wearing tonight. This was sewn by a friend's sister, God bless her, from some clearance fabric she got at Walmart. There's a pipe cleaner to put over the nose to sort of get it tighter. So it really doesn't serve a health purpose of any sort for anyone. And if you ask any of the EMTs or the medical profession that actually wear PPE to protect themselves, that is purchased from Lab Safety or some company that actually is designed to manufacture and make PPE equipment. And so as you know, you look around the classroom and you've got a variety of different fabrics and weaves and children wearing them, some over their nose. Some maybe have sneezed into their masks and now they've got to inhale that in for the rest of the day because they don't have another mask to change into. And maybe Sally has asthma and really shouldn't be wearing a mask. And Billy has, I don't know, some kind of COPD or autism spectrum. And it's just such a disservice to think that as a board or a health department that you know our children's health situations and what they deal with on a daily basis.
30 seconds.
You really don't have any of that information, and nor should you be trying to parent children's health situations. So I'm asking that you consider not only the health of the child, but there's also the safety and the emotional well-being that's involved. So I'm asking that you let the mask be voluntary and that should be a decision that a parent should make. And by the way, I have raised 5 children, so I know what I'm talking about. And I know, you know, I wouldn't want a state agency or some kind of school board dictating what I felt was best for my child. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to apologize because this next name I'm not going to get right. So John, is it Bosheen? I apologize.
Well, I really don't have anything prepared because short notice, but I'm new to the area. We came here because of the Milton School District being one of the better school districts in the area. I come from out of state and I have friends in that state that are school teachers and none of their kids have to wear a mask anymore in their schools. And if this pandemic was as dangerous as people are led to believe, our country would be unified and act as one. And as you've heard from other people say, Rock County and Dane are the only ones that are still mandating masks for our children. It's just unreal. We have multiple doctors that do multiple different things. Would you want to all send your kids or yourself to the same doctor? No. People deserve to have choices. And as parents, we deserve to make the choices for our kids as well. My daughter told me yesterday that she didn't want to go to school today because she didn't want to wear her mask. And I can guarantee you, my daughter is not the only kid that has said that in this school district. If one parent can call because they see that kids are playing on a playground and are unmasked, and now it's a district policy that all kids have to wear masks, whether inside or outside, it's hypocritical that all of us would be standing here saying, well, not hypocritical, but I think you understand what I'm saying, that if one person can make a school board change their policy to mandate that all kids wear masks, whether inside or outside, we have a lot more than one person, 2 person, 5 people, standing here. Let the parents choose if their kids want to wear a mask or not. It's called the personal decision. Let us choose for our kids. And instead of a school board that doesn't understand the ins and outs of our own child's safety. If it was about safety, I wouldn't be wearing this mask right now. I'd be wearing a face shield or something else because I have a medical condition, and I can guarantee you that nobody here has medical staff on campus that can render aid to me if my medical condition rises up. So if this was about safety, I wouldn't be wearing this.
Thank you. So just double checking, no one else has signed up for. Okay. Thank you for all who spoke. We are going to move on with our agenda. You are certainly free to stay if you'd like, but you are also free to, if you don't want to stay for the rest of the business, you're free to leave, and we will not take offense to that. Next on the agenda is we're going to have a presentation about board member roles and responsibilities, and that will be presented by attorney Shaina Lewis. So we'll invite Shaina back to the podium. Absolutely, please do. And Shaina, I would just like to say again, thank you so much for being here, for your time. We know life is busy, and we appreciate your willingness to be here tonight.
While Shaina is getting set up there, I'd like to introduce her. Shaina Lewis is a partner with the law firm of Strang, Pattison, Renning, Lewis, and Lacey. She has worked closely with the school district of Milton for many years. She has an expertise in both K-12 and higher education, labor and employment law, pupil discipline, open meetings, public records, and other educational topics. She is going to present here in open session on board member roles and responsibilities, which is a topic that she presents to multiple school districts across the state. So I'll turn things over to Shaina Lewis.
Thank you so much. And Kim has my presentation up on the screen, so I'm not sure if you guys have access to it. I think we shared it to you with you ahead of time. As Mr. Dahman said, I'm Shaina Lewis. I've been the school district's legal counsel for approximately 17 years. I think I'm getting that number accurate. I represent approximately 47 school districts across the state. I work for a law firm that represents more than 150 school districts across the state of Wisconsin. We have the pleasure, we have the opportunity to work with school boards in rural settings. Yep. Sure. Is it? Okay. Well, I know that there's some there's some noise, some ambient noise, so I will do my best. Is this? It is on, but I think it's communicating my voice to. district. So as a school attorney representing school districts prior to 1995, if a school district contacted their attorney and said that they wanted to, say, open a mental health facility within the school building in order to deal with the students or staff members' mental health concerns, we would then go to the statutes to look for where that authority might exist. Is there a statute that specifically authorizes a school district to take such action? Is there a case or a regulation that interprets a statute that would allow a school board to take such action? And if there was one, we would work with the school district in order to establish that mental health facility, take whatever necessary steps had to be taken. If there wasn't any such authority, because school districts were limited power or enumerated powers authorities or entities, we would then go through a lobbying process in order to get the legislature to adopt a statute that would then allow for the school district to take such action. In 1995, the legislature was probably fed up with the amount of times that school attorneys and lobbyists went to them to ask for some additional authority, because school boards, school district officials had great ideas, and those great ideas then needed to go through that legislative process in order to be adopted. They got fed up with it and decided that they would modify the entity, the authority of school districts, the type of entity it is, and they created the broad powers statutes. And so we've got Wisconsin Statute 118.001, Wisconsin Statute 118.01 sub 1, that now creates school districts in Wisconsin as expanded authority or broad powers entities, meaning that school boards are able to take any action that they wish to take, so long as it promotes education within the community, within the school district, within the state, within the country, as long as there is no statute that prohibits them from taking that action. So now, as a school attorney post-1995, if a school district were to contact me and ask me, can we establish a mental health facility within the school district, I would say, probably, but let's look at the statutes to see if there are any prohibitions. Let's see if there are any preconditions that the school district would have to satisfy before establishing that mental health facility. So now you're able to do essentially whatever you want to do, so long as it's not prohibited and so long as it promotes education from your perspective. If we go on to the next slide, what you will see is in Wisconsin Statute 120.12, and then the subsequent slide of Wisconsin Statute 120.13, that establishes the duties and the powers of the school board. You'll see that these are relics. These are the statutes that we used to go to find the authority for school districts and to find out whether you had the responsibility or the authority to take such action. Now we look at these statutes more so as, are there preconditions? Are there things we must do before we take certain types of actions? For example, with regard, if we're looking at 120.12, sub 2M is a very recent addition to the duties of a school district. School boards must adopt an educator effectiveness process in order to evaluate your professional staff, your teachers, your administrators. And you must go through a process that is blessed by, if you will, the Department of Public Instruction, or it's there's an equivalency process that you could use, but it has to go through this process in order for you to evaluate your staff. And so if you were to contact me and ask me if you could adopt a different type of educator evaluation program, what we would do is we would look at what that program has in common with or in conflict with the educator effectiveness statute and determine whether you can in fact go forward with that program. Because it promotes education, it is something that you would be able to do so long as you could comply with that statute. And I'm not going to go through all of the duties, all of the powers of the school board, but in 120.12 and 120.13, you see all of the ways in which school boards are expected to take action either through obligation or through authority to promote education within the school district environment. Now, one of the things about Wisconsin statutes 120.12 and 120.13, is that they regulate the school board. These are school board authorized actions or school board powers or duties. There are very few statutes, very few obligations within the statutes that address individual school board members, because you are expected to act as an entity. You are expected to essentially act as a body as opposed to individual board members. And we'll get into that in just a few minutes with regard to both the obligations and responsibilities of individual school board members. But moving to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the primary responsibilities of the school board versus the primary responsibilities of the administration. The primary responsibilities of the school board are these items. They are to establish and help fulfill the mission of the school board or of the school district. There are many school districts where the school board will meet to discuss the strategic planning for the school district. And you start with, what is the mission of our school district? Yes, generally speaking, it's to make sure that you're educating the students who reside within the Milton School District, but maybe it's more specific. Maybe you will have a mission to increase certain types of reading scores or increase civics knowledge or something to that effect. You guys as the school board dictate what the mission of this school district is and how it changes to reflect and to react to the developments in technology, the developments in the community, and the expectations of your constituents. You are also the policy-making entity in the school district. All of the policies that you adopt are how you then communicate to your administration, to your staff, to your students, to your parents, how it is that you expect them to meet the obligations that they have within the school district environment. And so if at any time you wish to affect change within the school district environment, policy is your best bet. That is how you then communicate what the school board wants or expects from its staff, students, or community. You're responsible for student achievement. We now have report cards, records that are published that indicate the level of student achievement that exists within the school district environment. That is a document that once we start reviewing it again, I know we're on a little bit of a hiatus because of COVID, but once they start publishing it again, that's something that you're going to want to look at to determine whether the policies that you've adopted, the programs that you've instituted or supported are actually achieving or addressing the student achievement goals that you have. And you are responsible as an entity. You're responsible for the budget. You are responsible for assuring that you have enough money to support your budget through taxation, but also that you are being responsible with the taxpayers' dollars through the budget. And it's your responsibility to review expenditures under that budget, and you do so at every board meeting. You are the employer in the district. In fact, you are the signatory. You are the party to contracts with every teacher who's employed in the district and every administrator who's employed by the district. You also employ a lot of support staff and seasonal employees, coaches, more temporary employees, but you only supervise one individual, and that is your superintendent directly. You supervise a great deal of employees, but more indirectly. So when you are dealing with the policies and the supervision of the school district, that all flows through the superintendent and the expectations that you have for the person in that position. But it's important to remember that you are the employer and you are the individual entity that is the party to the contract with those administrators and teachers, such that the school district cannot hire or fire an administrator or a teacher without board action. And in fact, you cannot hire or fire a teacher or an administrator without a majority of the full membership of the board. So not unanimous, but a majority of all of the members of the board voting in favor of that hire or termination or non-renewal. So you have to remember that you have to act as a group with regard to that action. You are responsible for the public relations and the political relations of the school district. Public relations is how you interact with the media, how you interact through your social media, how you interact with the public at large in response to questions and concerns. Political relations are how you interact with and cooperate with other administrative agencies, other school districts, other municipalities, the state, and the federal government. You are also the ethical leader of the school district, meaning that your ethics have to be beyond question. Your ethics have to be to the point where when you sit in judgment of a student through an expulsion hearing or a staff member through a disciplinary or termination hearing, that there isn't a concern about your individual ethics or the ethics of the board as a whole. You are the ethical leader, and any kind of ethical concerns do in fact create issues that we may have to address as we deal with those important roles that you perform. You are also the impartial tribunal, so you are the body that makes decisions with regard to due process hearings. The most frequent due process hearings that you're responsible for are student expulsion hearings and your professional staff member termination hearings or non-renewal hearings. Each of your students who is facing expulsion, each of your staff members who's facing termination or non-renewal is expecting to be addressed by an impartial body, a body that is going to hear the evidence that is before them that evening and not making decisions where you've prejudged the determination or you're making decisions based on rumor or hearsay that you've heard outside of the due process hearing. And so anytime that we're in a situation where we must recommend to you termination, contract non-renewal, or termination, we're going to make sure that everyone who is sitting on the board to hear that due process hearing understands what their ethical obligations are, what their obligations are with regard to due process, and making sure that if you cannot make a decision based on the information presented that evening in an impartial or unbiased manner, that you recuse yourself. And so we talk about that at any time we have to go through that process, which hopefully is not very often, but does happen periodically. Moving on to the next slide, the primary responsibilities of the administration you'll see are a little bit different than the responsibilities of the school board. Your administration includes your chief administrative officer, your chief executive officer. They're responsible for the day-to-day operations of the district. Based on your policies and based on the distribution of labor, your administration is responsible for managing a number of functions of the district: evaluation, planning, reporting, personnel, coordination, and enforcement of board policies. They specifically manage the promotion of pupils through the support and certified staff. They take action in the absence of policy. So in the event that you do have a gap or an absence of policy, your administration is authorized to take action. They participate in your committees in order to make sure that you have information related to the actual operations of the district, since they're on the front lines dealing with the enforcement of your policies. They tell you what's working, what's not working, and you can work with them in that committee setting in order to find out whether there are changes that need to be made to the programs or policies that you've adopted. They assist in the preparation of your board agenda, and they provide recommendations regarding the hiring of staff, the firing of staff, the changes to policy, the organizational structure of the district, the organizational plan of the district, how many schools you have, the distribution of grade levels and programming throughout the schools. It is their responsibility as the experts in education to bring that information to you and make appropriate recommendations. They also develop and evaluate curriculum and propose changes to that curriculum. And they are, as I mentioned before, your administration supervises the rest of the staff. You supervise the superintendent, superintendent supervises administrators, and then administrators supervise the rest of the staff. But again, they make recommendations to the board based on those day-to-day interactions, the observations and evaluations that they make with regard to staff. Now, moving on to the next slide, we've been talking a lot, as I mentioned before, about the power of the school board. The school board has really all of the power that the statutes provide. There are some individual powers that are assigned to officers of the board through statutes and through policies. But generally speaking, individual school board members have very limited powers, only as a member of the governmental body, as delegated by the governmental body. There will be times, either through policy, you've identified your board president as your spokesperson, for example, or you've delegated some authority to a committee member, or if there's some kind of expertise that you want to take advantage of with regard to one of your board members, maybe you will delegate some responsibility to them. But it is only as officially delegated that an individual board member would have power, other than the most important power that individual school board members have, and that is to vote at school board meetings, to attend school board meetings and to take action, to discuss issues, to make sure that they have enough information to take action, and then to be present at school board meetings during properly posted meetings in open session to have that discussion and vote. That is the power of individual school board members. In addition to the power that school board members have, there are a lot of responsibilities, or I should say in contrast. There are these limited powers that individual school board members have, but there are a lot of responsibilities that individual school board members have that are separate and distinct from the power of the entity, but that you have to police yourself with regard to these responsibilities as individual board members. The first one that is quite important, and that is with regard to conflicts of interest. You need to avoid conflicts of interest, and I would encourage you to both avoid actual conflicts of interest as well as perceived conflicts of interest. Anytime when the public is questioning whether you are satisfying the interests of the district or prioritizing the interests of the district over a personal interest, whether it's a personal financial interest, a personal relationship interest, you want to make sure that when you are making decisions that the public understands that you're doing so based on what you believe the best interests of the district force you to decide. And anytime you are in a situation where there's another priority or another conflict where you have an affiliation or an association or an expectation to another person or another entity, that could create, number one, a perceived conflict of interest, but also could create a real legal conflict of interest. School board members are governed by the Code of Ethics for Local Public Officials. The Code of Ethics for Local Public Officials really expects that school board members are not going to take any action where they would have any kind of financial interest in the action, personal financial interest in the action that they would be taking. The personal financial interest applies to both the school board member specifically. So if you, for example, you work for a company that you're going to get a commission because of a contract with the school board, or you want to work for the school district, and so you're taking action in order to get yourself a salary or benefits, or if your spouse is employed by the district or contracts with the district, and you're taking action with regard to any kind of financial windfall for your spouse, that could be problematic. The term immediate family is utilized within both your policy and within the Code of Ethics for Local Public Officials. Immediate family is often misunderstood, but in the context of the Code of Ethics for Local Public Officials, it is your spouse, and it is any of your relatives for whom you have a financial responsibility of at least 51%, or who have a financial responsibility for you of at least 51%. So to the extent that you have a brother who's employed by the district, to the extent that you have a child who's employed by the district or who contracts with the district, technically speaking, in the event that you take action on a contract that provides that family member with a financial contract or a financial benefit, that's not a Code of Ethics violation, but it could be a perceived conflict of interest. And that's where we need to make sure that you're taking note of those relationships and determining whether you should recuse yourself from discussion and action regarding any kind of a conflict of interest, any contract or any decision with regard to benefit that could be imposed upon there could be provided to one of your family members. There's also, as part of the Code of Ethics for local public officials, the expectation that you are not going to take action in your official capacity as a school board member to benefit an organization with which you are associated. An organization with which you are associated means an organization where you are an owner, where you are a trustee or an officer or a director. And to the extent that there is an organization with which you are associated that has a contract or a relationship with the school board, with the school district, you're going to want to make sure that you are recusing yourself from both the discussion and action with regard to any of those contracts or decisions. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. There are some school board members who believe that as long as I don't vote on the contract, I can participate in the discussion, I can participate in kind of the background information, I can provide information to the board with regard to the organization or with regard to my immediate family member who is contracting with the district. The reality is that if you can't vote on something because you have a conflict of interest, you also cannot participate in the discussion with regard to that item. So it is important that if you find yourself looking at the agenda for the board meeting and you see that there is something on the agenda by which you are concerned that you might have a conflict of interest, that you recuse yourself from the entire discussion and action with regard to that item. If you see something on the agenda and you're confused about whether it could create a conflict of interest, that's where contacting your board president, contacting your superintendent, perhaps involving me in order to assist with any kind of legal analysis as to whether you actually do have a conflict of interest. That's what you want to do to make sure that you don't find yourself in a situation where you've inadvertently violated the law because of a conflict of interest. I'm going to move on from conflicts of interest just to move into some of the other responsibilities because I know that we have limited time. I do want to say one more quick thing about conflicts that really are with regard to incompatibility of positions. There are some situations where you have, all of you have some other kind of role within the community, within your career, to the extent that you have a position that you believe you cannot perform at the same time that you perform your role on the school board. We should evaluate whether there is an incompatibility of position issue with regard to those two positions. For example, if any of you would like to be employed by the school district of Milton, you cannot be employed by the school district of Milton and serve on the school board at the same time. That would be a violation of the incompatibility of positions doctrine. And so you'd need to make a choice as to which one of those you wish to perform. And that happens periodically, that a position might open up within the district. And just because you're on the board doesn't mean that you're not interested in it. But you can't serve in both capacities. And we'd actually counsel you to step down before you even go through the process of interviewing for that position. It is also possible that you'd like to volunteer in the school district, that perhaps you want to be a coach or you want to be an advisor for forensics, for example. If you're going to do something like that, up until a couple of years ago, I would tell you that you can't, that the incompatibility of positions doctrine would actually have prevented you from doing so. However, several years ago, we adopted a statute that allows a school board member to volunteer as a coach or as an advisor, provided the school board member is not getting paid, provided the school board member recuses himself or herself from all decisions with regard to the sport or the activity that they are participating in, and provided that the school board member goes through a criminal background check. If you're willing to go through all of those procedures to fulfill those criteria, then you would be allowed to be considered to serve as a volunteer coach or advisor. But if you're unwilling to do that, then you would not be able to do that for the school district of Milton. I should tell you that there is nothing that prevents you from volunteering or even working for compensation for another school district or even for a municipality that has a relationship with the school board or with the school district, provided that we are policing whether there are any concerns about another type of conflict of interest with regard to contracting with that organization. In addition to conflicts of interest, school board members, individual school board members, have a responsibility regarding the public records law. The school board members engage in the creation of public records on a regular basis. Every time you receive an email, every time you send an email, every time you create a document or you take action, and your action is recorded in the minutes, you're involved in the creation of public records. For the most part, if you are utilizing your district-issued technology, your district-issued accounts, we are, as a school district, maintaining and capturing and preserving those communications and the documentation that you're creating that constitutes public records. What gets a little bit confusing is when you are utilizing your personal communication devices, your cell phones, your email accounts that are issued by either work, or maybe you have a Gmail account or a Yahoo account. In the event that you are utilizing those personal communication devices or accounts, or maybe you are communicating through your social media accounts, if you are conducting district business, you're communicating with another board member about the upcoming board meeting, you're soliciting or interacting with your constituents about issues that relate to the school district itself, you are in fact creating public records. Text messages between school board members about district business are public records. Text messages between school board members and constituents or employees or administrators, those are public records as well. And because of your position as a school board member, you have a responsibility to preserve, to maintain those records. If you destroy them, you have violated your records retention schedule. If you do not produce them in response to a public records request, the district can face liability related to the fact that we have not produced the records that are classified as public records and that have been requested through a valid public records request. What I would encourage you to do, because technology is very easy, technology is very convenient. Sending a text message, sending an email seems to have replaced telephone calls at this point or personal conversations. I would tell you to be very cautious. If at all possible, use your district-issued technology to do so, because we can help you preserve those records and end up disclosing them to the extent that we get a records request for those records. If you're using your personal communication devices, if you're texting on your personal cell phone or emailing on your personal email accounts, you still have the obligation to preserve those records and may have an obligation to turn those over to the district in the event that we get a records request for them. And it's just more difficult to deal with. If you have any questions about what you've already done or how you're already addressing this, we're happy to talk about those at another time on an individual basis. But I just want to make sure that I'm pointing out to you and that you're taking seriously, to the extent that you are communicating with the public in the context of social media, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a second, you are creating public records that we have to worry about. In addition, we have to worry about the open meetings law. We're here tonight in a properly posted open meeting. This meeting has been posted. This meeting has been provided access to the public, whoever wants to attend. In fact, we've got people who are watching virtually as well as people who are here in person. There are times when there are communications that occur, maybe through reply all in an email or a text thread or social media, where suddenly we've got a quorum of board members who are communicating outside of a properly posted board meeting, and there could be an argument that those communications reflect what would actually be happening at a meeting, and therefore, by utilizing technology, we are violating the open meetings law. And so we want to be careful about creating that reply all, where we're going from board member to board member and creating that discussion that creates a walking quorum, and using technology in a way that violates the open meetings law. We also want to make sure that when we are at properly posted board meetings, that individual board members understand that they have the right to know, just like the public, what's on the agenda. They have the right to only, and the responsibility to only address items that are on the agenda. And if you come up with an idea about something you want to talk about that isn't on the agenda, hasn't been properly posted, your administration, your board president, if I'm here, I'm likely to say it, will tell you, while that might be a great conversation to have at a time when it's been properly posted, we can't talk about that tonight. The board can't talk about that tonight because the public wasn't notified that that item is on the agenda and that the item would be discussed. And there are lots of issues, especially controversial issues, that if you discuss it without the public present, they're missing out on the opportunity to hear what you have to say about it, to understand what your position is, to witness that discussion, that debate that is supposed to happen at these board meetings. And so we'll tell you, while that's a great topic to talk about, we're going to have to put it on the agenda for the next meeting so that the public is warned about it. You have the opportunity, and you did so tonight, to go into closed session at times when it is necessary to do so, when it is permissible to do so. The open meetings law provides for certain exemptions from the default rule that it means that everything happens in open session, except to the extent that there is a topic that will be addressed that satisfies one of the exemptions. I'm not going to go through all of the exemptions in the open meetings law, but I will tell you that there are many times when a school district, when a school board will ask me, can we talk about X, Y, or Z in closed session? And I will say that there is no ability to talk about something in closed session unless it meets one of those criteria, one of those exemption requirements. It's not as though the open meetings law allows you to meet in closed session simply because something is controversial, something would be, is embarrassing or uncomfortable. It actually has to meet one of the criteria. So it has to be something related to the employment of a particular employee as opposed to a general policy that applies to all your employees. It has to be something that could have a negative reputational interest and impact someone in a negative way that you're talking about with regard to an investigation or medical leave. It could be a situation where, like we talked about tonight, which is that you needed advice from your legal counsel with regard to litigation that is occurring. But anytime you want to talk about something in closed session, it has to be, number one, it has to meet one of the statutory criteria for exemption from the general rule, and it also has to be properly posted. So your meeting notice has to identify that you are going into closed session, and that you're going into closed session based on this specific statutory exemption. And here's, generally speaking, what the subject matter is that will be discussed. So we talked about before, one of the responsibilities of a school board member with regard to personnel matters is to sit in as a member of that impartial body. And so to the extent that there are due process hearings, you have a specific role in those hearings. With regard to complaints or rumors, we're going to talk about that with regard to the next slide. So there are times when school board members get both inquiries or information from the staff or from the public. It is important that you remember what your role is on the board, in the district, with regard to personnel matters, student matters, and your role is with regard to policy. Your role is with regard to that impartial body. What that means is that in the event that a community member or staff member, they come to you with information regarding a personnel issue, for example, one of the things that you're going to want to do is to make sure that the staff member or the community member understands that while you are receptive to hearing this information, that your role doesn't allow you to investigate or to follow up directly with regard to those items because you have that special role within the potential for a hearing. So you would want to refer that to your district administrator or to another appropriate administrator or person within the school district to address. If someone comes to you, a staff member comes to you with a dispute with another staff member, you should be asking them whether they've addressed it with that staff member or addressed it with their supervisor, or tell them that you'd be happy to refer them to a particular supervisor or staff member. In the event that a parent or a community member comes to you with a complaint about an employee, complaint about a staff member, you would want to ask them the same thing. Have you gone to that particular staff member with your concern or complaint? Have you talked with their supervisor? Because you're not the one who wants to investigate. In the event that you take on the role of investigator or advocate for a staff member or community member with regard to a personnel matter, once we get to, if we ever do have to get to a termination hearing or a disciplinary hearing, there's going to be a question as to whether you can serve in that capacity as an impartial part of the body that's hearing the case. If you're an advocate, if you're an investigator, you will essentially have lost your opportunity to sit as an impartial member of that body. And so what you would end up having to do is recuse yourself. The members of the public elected you in order to serve in that capacity, not to be that day-to-day operations investigator or advocate for your staff. So it's very important that you refer those matters, if they come to you, to appropriate administrators. You may also want to direct them to Board Policy 3112, which is Board Staff Communications, Board Policy 4112, which is Board Staff Communications with regard to support staff versus professional staff, and then Board Policy 9130, which is public requests, suggestions, or complaints. I'd also mention that you've got a grievance procedure to the extent that a staff member is coming to you with a complaint or a concern about discipline, termination, or a workplace safety matter. If someone were to come to you, staff member or community members, and share records with you, I would encourage you to decline them and to refer them again to the proper administrator. If you receive this information, again, this is a public record that you are receiving. It is the fact that you received it as a public record. It could impact your ability to serve as that impartial tribunal member. And it also could create a situation where perhaps the right member of your staff is not getting that information. So we're referring them to the proper administrator. If you don't know who that is, referring them to the district administrator. In the event that someone comes to you with rumors or hearsay, I would again encourage you to speak with an administrator about it, to not try to investigate, not try to follow up, not try to figure out whether the rumor or hearsay is accurate. Again, that is not your role as school board members. Your role is more of a macro, of an oversight role, whereas your administration is to deal with the day-to-day operations. You have every right to refer that to the administrators and to follow up to make sure that they've addressed it. In the event that you are concerned that they aren't addressing it, remember that you supervise the superintendent, and the superintendent supervises the rest of the staff directly and indirectly. So if you are finding that someone is coming to you over and over again, indicating that their personnel matter, their student matter, their rumor or their hearsay is not being followed up on or not being addressed, you have every right to follow up with your superintendent to get an update with regard to what is going on. And the superintendent will do his best in order to make sure that he provides you with enough information so that you understand that it's being handled, but not so much information that you are then unable to serve in your capacity as that impartial tribunal member in the event that we have to find ourselves in a student expulsion hearing or a staff member disciplinary or termination hearing. I want to mention one thing with regard to public comments, and you had public comments here tonight. You have a policy that governs public comment. I was happy to see that at no time did the board members try to interact with the members of the public who were providing public comment. It is important that to the extent that people are coming here to speak on matters that are on the agenda, which your policy requires, that you address it at the time in which the board is going to address that specific issue, and to make sure that if the board is going to address that certain issue, that it is properly posted depending upon the subject matter that the member of the public is speaking on. There is nothing that prevents someone from bringing up an issue to you, and in the event that you want to have further discussion or communication about it, you would ask that item be put on the agenda for the next board meeting, as opposed to utilizing the public comment period for purposes of talking about something that isn't actually in specifics on the agenda in a way that the members of the public would understand that it is going to be discussed. Last slide I want to just cover are some common mistakes made by individual school board members. This is a list of common mistakes that we've put together over a number of years, a number of experiences, seeing kind of what school board members with the best of intentions end up, unfortunately or inadvertently, making mistakes because of the failure to stop and think maybe about what it is that they're trying to do and what their role is in the school district. The first common mistake that we see is a lack of patience. There are things that take a lot of time, and there are things that take very little time. Sometimes it's not clear, it's not intuitive as to how much time something is going to take. If you have questions about the timing, ask your administration to tell you how long you expect them to take, or how long the issue is expected to be addressed, and then have them report back. But definitely be patient. There are things that just take a lot of time. A common mistake is undermining or challenging the board once a decision has been made. There are going to be times when you're not going to have a unanimous decision, where you're going to have a certain number of board members where you might be in the minority and you voted against something. After the vote is taken, after the board has a decision that is made, you don't have to agree with that decision if you voted against it, but you do have an obligation to the rest of your board members not to take action to undermine the decision that was made or to challenge the decision that was made beyond the discussion that happened prior to the decision being made. That's not to say that boards can't change their mind, but they are definitely not inclined to change their mind simply because they've been bullied to do so or shamed by virtue of one board member or a couple of board members who didn't agree with the majority vote. Being a lone ranger or disregarding the team. As we talked about a lot with regard to this presentation, school board members have very little power on an individual basis, but you have great power. You have broad powers as a group. Remember that and utilize each other in order to make those decisions, and remember that you are part of a team. Don't drop a bomb at a school board meeting, and I mean that figuratively in the sense of don't surprise your administration or surprise your board members with a subject that is not posted on the agenda, because that would be an open meetings law violation, or a request that the administration might not be aware of. It may be very easy for your superintendent to get information for the board to review if they know about it ahead of time. And if you say it at the board meeting without giving them a heads up, you might find yourself in a situation where it appears to be an adverse relationship. Don't engage in politics. You guys are elected officials, but these are nonpartisan positions. And politics is kind of the word for, kind of undermining or deal making and really not working as a team. So there's no reason to engage in politics or ball carrying, if you will. If you have an agenda, tell people what it is. You might find out that the agenda that you have or the mission that you have is shared by a majority of your fellow school board members. And it might be something that you have this fantastic idea that you can get everyone on board and move forward. But there are procedures that have to be in place. That has to be during a properly posted board meeting. And there has to be some research or support provided. Understand that the chain of command is there. You've adopted a policy that indicates that there is a chain of command, and respect that. If you are forever going to your staff that are supervised by other staff and not contacting the proper administrator who's responsible, you're going to find yourself in a situation where your administration is not going to think that you trust them. And there's going to be some concern about whether the chain of command is actually working. You also don't find out that your chain of command isn't working if you go around the supervisors. It may very well be that you've got someone in an administrative position who isn't doing what you want them to do, but you'll never find that out if you keep skipping them in the chain of command. Providing individual directions to administration. Understand again that individual board members don't have a lot of don't have a lot of powers, but a lot of responsibilities. If each one of you is asking the administration or the clerical staff to get you documentation or to provide you with information, and the rest of you don't know what the others are asking, it could be that you're sending your administration on wild goose chases, and you want to be careful that you're not doing so. Your administration, if they get a request that is burdensome or that requires a lot of work, might come back to you as a group and say, Joe wants us to look into this. Is that what the rest of the board wants us to do? That's not disrespectful to the board or to you as an individual board member. That's making sure that your administration is running effectively and efficiently and not taking individual direction. Be prepared for board meetings. So many of you talked this as we started our closed session about how you read all of the information that we distributed. That's great. Making sure that you are informed prior to coming here, reading your board packet is what is expected of you. And if you don't have the opportunity to do so or get your questions answered, ask for more time. Don't have a bias that you don't reveal so that we can address it. Don't interfere or impede the administration's day-to-day operations. If you want the opportunity to work on a particular project, that's talking with your board president, talking with your administration. You can be assigned to a committee or a specific initiative if you have a passion for something. Don't villainize your administration or staff. Don't ignore your policy. And most important, don't violate the law. If you violate the law intentionally, it's very hard for us to help. If you do it unintentionally or inadvertently, we can certainly address it. But repeated violations of the law are things that we just can't handle and could get you into trouble from the criminal statutes, could get you in trouble from the Code of Ethics for local public officials, and certainly could get you in trouble when it comes to elections. Now, that's a lot of information that we've covered in a short period of time. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer with regard to these subjects? I will again tell you that a lot of this information is information that you'll digest, and then you'll ask yourself, do I have a conflict? Do I have a question about this? Am I doing something that violates the open meetings law, the public records law? Am I doing something that that is a conflict of interest, or is one of my school board members, fellow school board members, doing that? Speaking with the administration, your board president, to get to legal counsel, we're happy to analyze and evaluate these situations before they become an issue, before someone brings them up from the outside. And so let us know if there's anything we can do with regard to those issues.
Shaina, I had a quick question. I asked Rich, and he said that would be a great question for Shaina. Would it be possible, or would it not be advisable, that, let's say, just for community building, somebody said, everyone's invited to my house for snacks and just to get to know each other on a human level?
So that's unfortunately not a great idea. So school board members have a responsibility to meet in public during a properly posted meeting. There are exceptions for social or chance encounters, but the expectation is that you're not conducting any kind of governmental business while you're there. I had a school board member several years ago tell me that he wanted to invite his fellow school board members to a surprise party that he was throwing for his wife. And it would really cramp the style of a surprise party if we had to post the meeting ahead of time. And so I told him, I'm very sorry, but as much as that's something that you want to do, it's really safest if you don't invite any of the board members, or if you tell the board members who are going to attend, why don't you guys come in kind of stages? 2 of you can come, and then another 2 of you can come, and then another 2 of you can come as people are leaving, so that you never have a quorum of the board present at the same time. I know that's not great for establishing, relationships, but 2 board members together, even 3 board members together, isn't a quorum unless they're all members of the same committee or 2 members of a committee of 3. So if you want to get to know each other through individual lunches, individual coffees, individual dinners, getting drinks, you are welcome to do that. You can call each other on the phone. You can Zoom with one another. You don't have to record any of that. There's no obligation to post that. But the moment that you get a quorum of you together, even if it's in kind of an informal setting, if you are planning on talking about the school district business at all, you're running the risk of violating the open meetings law. And I'll tell you, having a quorum present, the default is that we assume you're talking about governmental business. It would be our burden to prove that you weren't. And if we're unable to do that, if we're unable to prove it, you'd be in violation of the open meetings law.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I have a quick one, Shaina, and you just touched on it, and I think I know the answer, but I'll have you expound for the benefit of maybe some of our other board members. Our obligation, I'm talking about a communication in a one-on-one situation with 2 board members. If I text that board member on my personal device, I'm obligated to preserve it, but the voice conversation, not?
You're not required to record a voice conversation.
Okay.
So just so we're clear, the public records law was created before texting, before email, and is trying to catch up. We're not quite there yet. But there's no obligation that you record a telephone conversation. We have a record of the fact that a call was made, and that record needs to be preserved. But the conversation itself doesn't need to be recorded. If it is recorded, it is a record that we have to preserve. But if it isn't recorded, we don't have to preserve it. A text message, unfortunately, unlike a voice conversation, there's a record that's already created that's more than just a number to a number. It's actually content, it's substantive. And so the law requires us, at least at this point, to maintain that record and then produce it in the event that it's requested. And the same is true with regard to social media. I know there are some board members who maybe through their campaigns or just through habit have been communicating with the public with regard to their service as a board member. The moment that you became a board member and you are communicating with the public through your social media sites, unless you are providing disclaimers and you are adhering to the disclaimer that you are not speaking on behalf of the school board and that you are not conducting governmental business, technically speaking, your communications on social media are public records that need to be maintained. And then based on two recent cases, one involving former President Trump and a representative, Jesse Kramer from our state government, you're actually not allowed to block anyone. So if someone disagrees with you or is interacting with you on social media on your site that you are using to communicate with your constituents, you can't block them. You can't stop them from commenting or communicating if you're not stopping other people who do agree with you from communicating. And so to the extent that you are using social media in your capacity as a school board member, you want to be very careful, because doing so creates a significant obligation on you if you are using that social media for anything more than just your personal, interactions with maybe friends and family. So I would encourage you not to use your social media, any kind of social media, for communications with constituents, and to reserve that for your district issued technology, your email that the district issued to you, and any kind of social media site that the district maintains. Any other questions? I know we've gone a little long.
Shaina, I have one question. If an individual board member is taking action that puts the district at risk of liability, what's the responsibility of the board as a whole and or the district administrator?
So that's a really good question, and it's a complicated question. First of all, the expectation is that the school board members are minimizing the risk of liability for the district itself. The hope is that no school board member individually or the school board as a whole taking action that the board knows will increase liability. Of course, there are some gray areas there. There are times when the board is going to make a decision, the district is going to make a decision where liability or the risk of liability is something that we cannot avoid. There are times when people are on two sides of an issue and the district has to take action on one side or the other. And there is always the potential that someone is going to sue the school district under some kind of argument. In the event, though, that a school board member is acting in kind of a rogue capacity, if you will, the school board member is violating policy, the school board member is violating the law, there are directions or advice that is provided to that school board member from either the administration, the school board president, or legal counsel. Technically speaking, that school board member is then on his or her own. That individual could be personally liable under the open meetings law. That school board member could be personally liable for defamation. That school board member could be personally liable for any other kind of claim that would be assessed against them or would be brought against them. Typically, while there's no legal obligation typically we try to make sure that we warn school board members before they go down that path. And so that we're hoping that they're going to avoid that kind of action. I would imagine that from an open meetings law standpoint, that your superintendent is going to be counseling you about not going into closed session when you're not supposed to, not disclosing records when you're not supposed to, protecting confidentiality of students and staff members when they're entitled to confidentiality. In the event that a school board member just simply disregards and the rest of the school board is unhappy with both the potential liability as well as just the public relations aspect of whatever it is that school board member did or did not do. Sometimes the school board will censure, C-E-N-S-U-R-E, not censor, a school board member, which is essentially publicly disavowing what the school board member did or did not do and indicating that school board member does not speak on behalf of the rest of the board. In some cases, there are complaints that can be filed against the school board member with the Ethics Commission, if it's a conflict of interest or a code of ethics violation, with the Elections Commission, if it's a campaign finance issue, and when the action is egregious or criminal, we could involve the district attorney or the attorney general's office in order to police the situation. In very extreme situations, recall elections are pursued, as well as the potential for removal by a judge. But the school board itself does not have the authority to remove a school board member, to financially penalize a school board member, or to refuse to allow a school board member to be present during a meeting or to participate in that meeting. The school board just simply doesn't have the ability to overrule the electorate in order to make those decisions. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anything else? Okay, with that, then I will say thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you, to provide you with this information. In the event that you have any additional questions, any specific questions to your own situation, or if you're concerned about another school board member and whether what they're doing is above board or is legally compliant, again, speak with your superintendent, your school board president, and we'd be happy to get you an answer. Thank you.
On behalf of the board, Shaina, thanks so much for being here tonight and for all the great information that you shared. Really appreciate it. Sure.
Could I recommend that the board split items 5 and 6 to that is constitute the year who's here to recognize and good, Rich.
I'd recommend that the board consider switching items 5 and 6. We have item 6 will be a short, somewhat short agenda item, and we have a Wisconsin Teacher of the Year who's been waiting to be recognized.
Is there anyone that has a problem with that? All right. So we will do 6 and then scoot back to 5. So, Anna, thank you so much for your patience and for being here. We have someone in our midst tonight who is one of 5 recipients in the entire state of Wisconsin to receive the Teacher of the Year award. And I had the honor of stopping by Harmony today and talking with Anna. We are so proud of you. We're so blessed that you're on our staff. And thank you for all you do each and every day to advocate for students and to educate the students. And we're honored to have you here. And I think that man who's beaming behind that mask must be your husband. So we're also glad that you're here tonight, Mr. Miller. So thank you both for being here. And I'm going to turn over this to Sarah Stuckey, and I believe Mrs. Susan Probst is going to say some words.
Sarah made me go first so I could turn the microphone on. I have the privilege of working with Anna because she's a speech path in the district. We have 7 speech paths, and Anna's one of our newest, and she's been here a couple of years. Every situation that comes across as our district team, Anna sees it as an opportunity, and she comes with 4 or 5 possible solutions. And then when we select that pathway, she is one that is a lifelong learner. She is always looking for a way to see if it's the right path and if that path needs to be refined. She's all about kids from 3 years old, because she works with our littlest little munchkins, as well as being part of a team that looks for assistive tech and finding the best ways to go. She is a real asset to a strong team, and she makes it even stronger. So I'm very, very proud to be working with you.
And at the building level, Anna is a leader amongst her peers. She not only leads within the special education department, but she's a leader amongst all of our teachers and staff. She supports our staff in trying new things with instructional technology. She leads by example and always, as Susan mentioned, finding innovative ways to do whatever it takes to meet the needs of her students. I rarely ever question an idea. I just sit back and watch her shine. She is an amazing educator who comes up with so many creative ways to tackle tough problems and to open doors for students who have some significant challenges with their communication. So she is a blessing to us all. I agree with Susan completely. And I am very proud, and I will continue to sing her praises because she does us all proud. She really does a beautiful job for the school district, and we're very grateful to have her service here.
On behalf of all of the staff with the school district, I want to thank Anna for her work and congratulate her for this honor. It is extremely well deserved. It's a high honor. As Mike mentioned earlier, there are 5 Teachers of the Year across the entire state of Wisconsin, and Anna has been named as one of those 5 Teachers of the Year, and it is something that is very well deserved. She makes a huge positive impact on our students across the district. So again, thank you, Anna, for your work. You're welcome to say a few words if you would like, but if you would rather not, there's not any expectation that you would.
The last few days have just been very overwhelming and very surprising, but I'm just so grateful for this community and all the words of encouragement. If I could share all the sweet letters I got from students today with all of you, I would. It's been heartwarming and very much appreciated. So thank you to all of you for making my job easy.
and thank you again, and congratulations.
So we will scooch back up to number 5 now, which is the superintendent update. So Rich, I will turn it over to you for an update on the Milton Forward Plan.
Unmute. All right. The update on the Milton Forward Plan, I want to give a couple different things that I'm going to speak to. An update on our number of positive COVID cases. That has remained steady across the district. This is district-wide, not just specific to students and staff, but that has remained consistent over the last 3 weeks, while there have been some increasing numbers in some of our neighboring districts. Every Friday we put out our dashboard that is specific to our students and staff that lists both the number of positive COVID cases that are active and the number of students who are out as close contacts. And as of this past Friday, May 7th, there were 4 students with positive active COVID cases and 0 staff members, and 37 students who are out as close contacts from school contact, and 26 students who are out as close contacts from out of school exposure. And that is an increase from the previous week for students, both for the number of positive cases and the number of close contacts. In our weekly meetings with Rock County Health Department, they had shared that the number of COVID-19 patients in Rock County hospitals has increased. As of May 4th, there were 28 patients at Rock County hospitals, with 2 of the hospitals reporting critical staffing shortages. And we continue to monitor the number of vaccines that have been administered across the county in those conversations with Rock County Health Department. As of last week, there were over 65,000 who had received their first dose and over 52,000 county residents who had received a second dose. I wanted to let the board know that we have an upcoming vaccine clinic that is being offered in conjunction with Rock County Health Department to provide a vaccine clinic on site at Milton High School. That's coming up on May 19th from 2 to 5 p.m. And that's available for any interested 16 to 18-year-olds with parent permission. So they would be able to receive their first vaccine dose if their family chooses to take advantage of that on May 19th, with that second dose to be available on June 9th. And then a couple comments on mask use and on quarantines. With mask use, the Rock County Health Department reopening plan was extended through June 30th. And as we noted in last week's Red Hawk review that we sent out to parents, we plan to continue to follow the Rock County Health Department recommendations and keep our current mask protocols in place for the remainder of this school year. We're beginning to have discussions both internally and with the county about what safety protocol we would have in place for summer school. If you recall, we have a significant number of summer school classes in June, and then also some more summer school classes that run through July and August. And we're also beginning to have discussions about safety protocol for the next school year. Decisions haven't been made about what safety protocol would be in place for summer school, but we've told families that we would communicate those out to them by June 1st. So we will get that information put together and out to families by June 1st. And then one item with quarantines that I want to note with the board, we are making a change to our length of our required quarantines. Starting tomorrow, we're updating our quarantine protocol for students and staff who have been close contacts. And this will be retroactive to any people who are currently being quarantined, and it will be moving forward for people who are quarantined for future close contacts. We have been staying with the Rock County recommendation of 14-day quarantines, and we are still going to have that available if people choose to quarantine for that long or in specific situations. But we are also going to move to a potential 10-day quarantine for students or staff if they don't have any symptoms and they're not living with someone who has a positive COVID case. So again, that will go into effect starting tomorrow. We'll communicate that out with any families that are currently having a student who has been quarantined. The 14-day quarantine would still be in place for students or staff who live with a positive COVID case, or if they have symptoms, or if they would choose to be out for that full 14-day guideline. The WIAA has recently made a change in their recommendations for student athletes, and they also would allow student athletes to return to practices and competitions under the 10-day guideline. So we would follow that guideline with our student athletes too. So any questions, comments, thoughts from board members on that update?
Hearing none, we'll move on to number 7. Thank you, Rich. Joe, we'll turn it over to you for a Finance Committee report.
Okay, the Finance Committee met, I believe, last Monday, a week ago. And I will introduce the topic and then grab some assistance from Rich and Carrie and Susan, I'm guessing. As all of you know, the country, the federal government has earmarked funds in several different phases for COVID recovery, if you will. Some of those are specific to schools. There's several acronyms attached. I think we've all heard about the CARES Act. The newest acronym is ESSER, E-S-S-E-R, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. I think I got that right. And there are three, as you will see on the presentation, there are three phases to that with some dollar amounts attached to the phases. We learned that, well, the dollar amount in phase one is somewhat concrete and reliable. The others are subject to some approval and modification. And I'm going to let Carrie and Rich and Susan share how we can use those funds. It's a grant situation such that we identify needs or potential needs that could be compensated and apply for the grant as long as it meets requirements that are attached therein. So with that intro.
That was my intro, Joe. The only other comment, if I could add, and I need to unmute this, yes? Okay.
Sorry, Carrie, only because it's 9:15. We're trying to roll.
No, you hit everything I was going to say, except for one thing. If I could just add that each of these different, there are 3 different grants, and each of them we need to just be mindful that they're one-time funds and that they need to be used for eligible expenditures in the grant. And overarching, all 3 of them have very similar uses, and as you said, they're related to COVID and how COVID has impacted our schools. Did you wish to talk about round 1, Rich, or?
Mute. Yeah, as shared there, we refer to the different portions as ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. And in ESSER 1, that money was made available about a year ago. The spending period runs from mid-March of last year, of 2020, runs through September of 22, so about a year and a half or a little bit over a year that money can be spent. That was a shade over $240,000 for our district. And our priority there was responding to immediate needs, making sure that we are taking steps to limit the risk to the health and safety of our students and staff and community and families. We looked at personal protective equipment, barriers for our classrooms, cleaning supplies for our classrooms and other parts of our schools and buses, and also additional costs that weren't covered elsewhere. And school nutrition is a good example of that. Then I'll turn it over to Susan. Are you going to speak to the ESSER 2 portion?
So the ESSER 2 funds are about $800,000, and the focus for those funds are on student learning and building teacher capacity. So the Mr. Ruggles and I, working with Carrie and Rich, created Thank you. I should have saw you wave at me. I used to get beeped. Thank you for not beeping me. And so the focus of these funds is really on learning, on teaching and learning. And so looking at our universal curriculum and our assessments that are monitoring whether students are learning or not, and then being able to respond as quickly as we possibly can. And then if our teachers need more support in responding to the gap that could be there, then what do we do to help support them to learn as much as they possibly can so our kids get a good experience? We do know that from looking at research from other school events that were interrupted by some type of natural cause or non-natural cause, that one of the important pieces for us to focus on is a sense of community and a sense of connectedness for our students so they feel very comfortable being back next year. That's been a focus of ours this year. Our connectedness survey shows very good numbers on kids feeling comfortable with their staff and with their colleagues or their fellow students. But that's the primary focus is the universal curriculum and then teacher skills. And there might be a couple of slides for that. Is there? And it really just kind of shares that information in a number of ways. So it talks about the academic, social, and emotional and behavioral skills. that students need to have, the universal curriculum, and then the evidence-based strategies, the evidence-based strategies, and then we're making decisions based on data, and that is supporting staff. The PLCs have been instrumental in helping us keep a pulse on what's working and what's not working and responding as quickly as possible. I think there might be one more slide, just kind of showing it just another way. You have that universal instruction with the standards and the assessments. There are priority standards at each grade level in the content areas, and then looking at how do we continue to improve that curriculum and how do we help support staff, and many times they're supporting each other with the skills that they have. And then finally, that final target is that social, emotional, and academic skills that students receive when they're in school or develop and refine. They receive skills lots of places. We build on them. Any questions on the CARES 2 app?
During the committee meeting, I'd asked if we would have access to the requests by teachers. And I was just curious if we would have that opportunity, because I know it's done by Google Form. And I was wondering if we would have the opportunity to view that as those requests come in.
We've gone through the first stage of reviewing priority options, and for the most part, principals have put them in, or directors working with principals in consultation with teachers. I don't know if there's, do you want a list tonight of the ones that are,
No, I just didn't know if we could have access as a viewer to the Google Form spreadsheet that's created essentially after being filled out.
I guess I would prefer that if the board says that that's something that they want, for me or Ryan and I to create here's the things and here's a brief description of it. The Google form, as people put it in, I'd like to be able to create a clean document if that would be possible.
I think
if that is the desire.
In part, when we get a request, the form is used to get initial requests, but then Susan and Ryan follow up with the principal or the director to get more information about that request before we make a decision on whether we're going to fund that request or not. We've made, I think Susan shared that we've made the decisions on some of those items because some of them were very time sensitive. Some of them aren't items that would start until later in the summer or even during the next school year or even further down the road than that, because we have the ability to utilize those funds for multiple years. So the thought is that we would bring the board and report back to the board on the different things that we're moving forward with, rather than every single idea that was brought out. Carrie is going to speak a little bit more to ESSER 3 here in a minute, but if the board does want to get involved in each individual request, that would be something that we could do, but it wouldn't be, as we heard earlier in the presentation from Shaina, that's more under the administrator's roles and responsibility than the board's roles and responsibility. And Carrie, do you want to go through the ESSER 3 portion?
But before I go to ESSER 3, I just want to clarify something about round 1 and round 2, or ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. Okay, the first money, as Rich said, we made a decision to focus on the immediate needs, health and safety, physical environment kind of things. Okay, when round 2 money came out, people kind of cut to the chase, and I know it's late, but if I can just hit the pause and tell you about my experience as we discussed round 2 money and the meetings that we were in, and the decision was made to focus on the instructional needs of students. And I just want that to be clear. That grant is eligible to use for much more, and a very intentional decision was made to focus on meeting student needs. And so I just want that to be clear that the grant doesn't require us to do that. That is a choice that we have focused on making. So I just want that clarity. So then that leads really into round 3 of money. And right now we're anticipating getting almost $2 million, but we need to wait until it goes through the Joint Finance Committee. So what happens is the Department of Public Instruction has a proposal on how the funds should be distributed. And then the Joint Finance Committee has an opportunity to respond to DPI's plan. So as you said, Joe, don't know for sure yet how much we're getting. But right now we're anticipating about $2 million. And as I said, when we talked about the second round of money, focusing on the student needs piece, when it comes to ESSER 3, we also want to start looping in indoor air quality, because the money is available to use to improve our learning environment. And it's also part of helps with our responsibility to provide a safe and healthful learning environment. So one of the things that we're talking about when we get to ESSER 3 money is that we want to use some of those resources to improve our indoor air quality. We'll continue to work on those physical health and safety measures. We're going to continue to look at additional costs that we can't cover elsewhere in our budget. If you recall, when this year started, we kept looking to see if we can manage everything that was coming up within our budget. And we also saved at the end of last year just in case. And I think we've been successful in managing within our budget so far. And then finally, there is a requirement that we reserve 20% to mitigate learning loss. And I think that's within populations in our district. It's not broad learning loss, but targeting populations that are at risk. So we will wait and see with round 3. We know it's coming. It's always interesting that the spending period could be March of 2020, but yet we don't know what our allocation is going to be. But we certainly can anticipate receiving another significant amount of money to help us respond to COVID and all the things that have happened in the last year. Do you have any questions?
There was one thing that I wanted to make sure, and it's in the memo, and we talked about it at the committee meeting, but we haven't mentioned it yet, that there is an item in new business tonight that is that will require board action because the total amount is more than $250,000, but it would be targeting some of the ESSER 3 funds designated for indoor air quality, and that will be coming up in the agenda under new business. And then also just reinforce that it is one-time money. So as we're looking at different ways to utilize that, both to address our facility needs with things like indoor air quality that would help with safety for students and staff. But the main point that we're going to be doing with these funds is ensure that we're meeting student needs, whether those are academic needs, social and emotional needs, behavioral needs of students. And we want those projects to be long lasting. We don't want them to be a Band-Aid that we put, but we want them to be ways that we can use that one-time money to affect change moving forward too. So that's an important part of our criteria. So our admin team have been working hard to develop different ideas. They're meeting with their staff in each of the buildings to gather ideas. In our staff advisory meeting today, there was an idea that was brought forward, so they're going to circle that back through their principal and get that on the option list too.
If no other questions, we will say thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Rich. And we will move on to a Human Resources Committee report from Mr. Mullen.
Mr. President, I know it's late. We've gone through a lot, but we have a lot more things to go over. I move that we take a brief 5-minute recess.
Is there a second?
I second.
There's a motion on the floor to take a brief 5-minute recess. Any discussion?
I think just one thing quick that I'll add. While we're taking the recess, if you're still on the camera, make sure that you mute yourself. If you're having conversations, if you're just talking in general to someone sitting next to you, remember that there's an audience virtually watching too.
All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carried. We will reconvene at 9:31.